Hi Peyton, I wanted to make you a little video about trig. You missed out that week, you were really sick. We went over some of this with your other classmates. I wanted to kind of go over with you. What is trig? Trig is a measurement of triangles. Originally, when they developed trig, it was used to deal with the relationships between sides and angles of triangles. It was used in astronomy, navigation, and surveying. Those were the big things back in the days with the old guys. In the 17th century, we kind of started viewing it slightly differently. Now they're used as functions with a set of real numbers as the domain. And trig is really used a lot in everyday life. Trig is used to study things such as sound waves. If you love music, let me tell you, there are engineers that are very concerned with trig. Light rays, the orbits of planets, pendulums. Your microwave uses aspects of trig. We use aspects of trig to figure out what the distance is away. We need to build a handicap ramp so that somebody like Corbin Butters could go up the ramp with his wheelchair. It's really used a lot. You just don't realize every place it's used. Now, to come and do this, again, we want to talk about the sides of a triangle. You're going to hear a lot of stuff about opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. Okay, if you're sitting at an angle, what's considered the opposite side? It's the one where you can draw out, oops, pardon me, let me try that again. Draw out from that angle and hit it. Adjacent makes up part of that side of that angle, and the hypotenuse is always going to be across from the right angle. That's not going to change. Okay, so you're really wanting to pay attention to where your opposite side and your adjacent side is. Okay, here's some different orientations of that same triangle, the right triangle. Here I'm looking from this direction. This is my opposite side. This is touching my angle, so it's my adjacent side. This has to be my hypotenuse. Here I'm looking down. So looking down, now this is my opposite side. This is my adjacent side. This is across from the right angle, so it's my hypotenuse. Now, probably going to send you a link to a little video, kind of a fun one, on SOHCAHTOA. But just to remind you, a lot of times we use the acronym SOHCAHTOA to try to remember trig. And SO stands for sine, and sine is S-I-N-E. And what is the sine represented by? Well, when I'm sitting at this angle, it's my opposite side over my hypotenuse side. Cosine is really spelled C-O-S-I-N-E. All right, sine down again. And cosine of theta, this is a Greek letter, is going to be your adjacent side over your hypotenuse. So when I'm here, it's going to be this side over, the hypotenuse. Now, tan stands for tangent, and that's, I'm spelling that wrong, tangent. And it's going to be your opposite side over your adjacent side. Tangent's the only one that sometimes you have a value that's greater than 1 that you use. Otherwise, cosine and sine will always, as you're putting stuff in to find angle measures, will always be less than 1. So moving on, how do you use it? Well, first of all, we use it just to set up. So I tell kids, put your finger at whatever angle you're looking at. I'm looking at angle P, so I'm going to place my finger here. Now sine is the same thing as so. That means it's opposite over hypotenuse. So I reach out and I grab the 4. I put it over the hypotenuse, which is the 5. Cosine of angle P means I'm at ca. That's going to be adjacent over my hypotenuse, 3 over 5. Tangent of P means it's going to be opposite over adjacent because it's TOA, so I'm going to get 4 over 3. Now this is just setting up the basic fractions. If I really wanted to find it, I'd have to grab a calculator and calculate out. Now you get slightly different changes over here when I look instead, put my finger or my hand up at R. Now remember, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Now this becomes 3 over 5. Cosine of R means adjacent over hypotenuse, so it's going to be 4 over 5. Tangent of R is opposite over adjacent, so I get 3/4. Now as you compare them, you kind of look at this and go, oh, these two are flipped around, depending on the orientation, and tangent is just an inverse of each other. moving on. So if we come here and we look, again, I put my finger at A. Sine is going to be opposite over hypotenuse. I get 11 over 12. Cosine of A would be adjacent over hypotenuse, which would be 5 over 12. Tangent is TOA, which is opposite over adjacent, so I get 11 over 5. Now as I come here and I place my hand or my finger in a different orientation, C is right here. Sine of C is going to be opposite over hypotenuse, so now it becomes 5 over 12. Notice it does not matter where I put my hand, my hypotenuse is always my hypotenuse is always my hypotenuse. Cosine at C, I'm looking for my adjacent side, which is 11 over 12. Tangent, which is TOA, which is opposite over adjacent, gives me 5 over 11. Doing that, I'm done. So it has some very much similarities, but some differences at the same time, depending on your orientation. Now, we do use it to find some different things. Now it says here, if cosine of t equals 12 over 13, find sine of t and tangent of t. Well, what they've done here is they've used this information to fill out a triangle. Now, filling out the triangle, remember, this is adjacent over hypotenuse. Well, I don't even need to know what my orientation is or where cosine of t is going to be, because I always know my hypotenuse is across from the right angle. The only place I had a question would have been on the 12. Now, it calls me cosine of capital T. Well, when I see a little t here representing a side, that means the vertex opposite it is where I need to put the capital letter. So looking at this, I need to try to find this remaining side in order to finish filling these up. One of the ways I can do it, I can go through and do Pythagorean theorem. I can say, well, I have t squared plus 12 squared, which is 144, equals 13 squared, which is 169. When I subtract 144, I find out that I get 25. Square root of each side, t is going to be equal to 5. Now that I know this side is 5, I can fill these out. Sine of t is opposite, which is 5, over hypotenuse, because this is so opposite over hypotenuse. Tangent is TOA, so at t, I want my opposite side, which is 5, over my adjacent side, which is 12. So this gives me the fractional value of those trig functions. Okay, now, if you're going to go use your calculator to find the value at this spot, what you're going to do is you're going to grab your calculator. I have one of the old ones. You're going to do this probably on, maybe you have a calculator at home, or else you're going to do it on the computer. But what you're going to do is you're going to have some trig buttons. Now, they've given you the angle measure. You're trying to go backwards to find the value of this. And you have to watch in Alex how many place values it tells you to find. A lot of times when we're going back to find the trig value of this, we want a lot of place values, because if we round it too quickly, it can be similar to one or two different angles. So more than one angle. So you want to make sure you go out far enough, so read your directions carefully. Here it says, use a calculator to find each ratio to 4 decimal places. Okay, so in other words, now how do I go backwards? Well, what I'm going to do on my calculator, I'm going to press in 60. Oh, I'm going to take that back. I'm going to press, this calculator uses a second button. Some calculators are going to use a shift button. Some calculators are going to use a control button. You have to look to see which one you're using. I'm going to press second, and since it says cosine, I'm going to press cosine. Now, why did I do that? I'm trying to activate this on my calculator. Cosine to the -1. What that means is you're going backwards to find the beginning value. So once I have pressed, in my calculator, I'm pressing second cosine, and then I'm putting in the angle measure. I'm putting in 62 and pressing enter. Oops, well, I still did something wrong. Hang on. Oh, I'm doing this wrong. 62 cosine. Okay, I fibbed. We don't need to do this part yet. I'm thinking of a different thing. And I don't want to have to retape the whole video. So, I take that back. We just want to press cosine, that button, and we are going to type in 62 and press enter. When I do that, this is what I get for an answer. I get 0.4695. Okay, I am sorry. I should have practiced beforehand. Don't press this for this part. We're not going backwards, we're just going to put it in. Okay, so what am I going to do for sine? So since I goofed up the first time, I'm not going to goof up the second time. I'm going to press sine, I'm going to press 17, and I'm going to press enter. So I get 0.2924 when I round. I had to round here. If I do tangent, I'm going to press tangent of 83. This is going to be 8.1443 is what I get for an answer. Again, this is the only one that can be more than 1. These two are always going to be less than 1 for values. I am sorry about that, but I don't want to have to retape this. So, that's it for today. Good luck. Have at her.